those
No, not yet.
plans? Not yet?
No.
Okay.
Mark has them, but he's waiting for permission, it sounds like, to be able to send them around, so.
Okay.
But my assumption is what I've understood is that those plans, they went as far as a conceptual level, they have a floor plan layout where the locker rooms and storage and all that sort of stuff goes. So that's what this study was to do anyways. So it makes sense to me that that's a good point to use what's been done and incorporate that into the design of the rest of the athletic complex for the high school. Any thoughts from anybody on using the pre-manufactured type structure? And that can, when I say pre-manufactured, that can be anything. What we would plan to do is to run through with you guys what those options are, right? Give you some examples of the very simple, which is kind of what you're probably used to at Haley Farm or Bluff Point, just a composting shed. You can go steps up from there where you have, powered self-composting type things all the way up to pre-manufactured buildings that we could just plug into utilities, and it looks like it's a building that was built on site, but it's just been dropped in place. So there are a range of building types that we would prepare to run through with you, help select which one's the right one for which location, and then that's what we'd be showing on the plan, both from a square footage, design area, as well as cost estimates.
I mean, I would say as a novice to this whole idea, other than the high school, I would have, I guess personally, I would have probably assumed in my mind that would be the type of thing we would go with, only because, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's just a matter of how big you guys believe it should be. I mean, that's really the, and what is it going to take care of, the amount of people, blah blah blah, which is the kind of information you would know. But I don't personally see any reason why we would have to go above and beyond that. I mean, I think that that would work for sure, for me, just my opinion. But
it comes down to customization most of the time, right? So if you think of the building that's currently at Pequannock Plains, that was a custom designed building for that location. It's not like it's a fancy piece of architecture, right? It's a utility building, but it was designed for that place. It was, the town said, we want a building that's got a garage of X size, bathrooms of X size, and, concession stands with this type of amenities in it. And that's the building that they got. When you're doing the pre-manufactured, it's more like you're shopping from a store and you're picking out the amenities you want, and you don't have the ability to customize it quite as much. That's the only difference. And so that's where I still think it's probably still appropriate for both of those two sites, where we need a fairly utility structure. There's no constraints that are going to drive the shape or the size of it that strongly, that's going to, that we have to have the exact right size by a foot, or something like that. For the two, I'll say, park sites, Fitch is the difference, right? Fitch is, that's definitely an architectural design project. And if it hadn't been already designed, we definitely have to figure out a way to get that into the project. But the fact that it's been designed once within the last year or so, I think it's probably the prudent thing to do, to use that design at least as a basis. And if, as we go forward and we incorporate it into the rest of the design, if there's things that we feel should change, then that's things we could note within that, so that at the point when we go to actually design that building down the road for construction, that those changes could be incorporated at that point.
anybody have anything else that they would like to add or discuss?
Mayor Franco does. She has her hands raised.
Oh, she does? Where? Oh, there she is.
On top.
She keeps moving on my screen. Go ahead, Mayor Franco.
Thank you. My video is not working for some reason. So, so when the money was allocated, what was in the writing for what was to spend the money on? And what was the goal of having that money?
A good question. So, and that's I tried to explain that a little bit last time, but when we first established what we thought the budget should be, when Jerry was putting this number together, it was just for the field design. It was strictly design the fields for these three amenities based on the needs assessments of the task force. And architecture was not part of that component at that point in time. And so then when the RFP for this project went out, the architecture got added into it as a component. So we added that as part of our response, and we've developed the fees based on that request. So that's why in my opinion, I think that's why there's a difference, is that, the initial pot of money that was set aside a couple years ago is based just on fields, and now we've added the architecture component. And in a perfect world, if we could fit it all in, that'd be great. But that's why I went to the effort to try to break out every single task so you could see what our fees were for every single component and see where the money was going. And it'd be great if we could fit it in somewhere, but there's just not much.
Because my recollection, and I could be wrong, was that part of it was to come back so that we could have a cost of what everything would cost us.
Yep.
And all the different options, and that if we wanted to go out for a referendum, we would have the cost so the community could just decide, but we needed to come up with a cost first.
Yes.
So
that's the outcome of this project, is to definitely fully do the design development portion of all three sites and come up with more refined plans that show all the amenities, as well as a cost estimate that's sufficient to go out for referendum if that's how the town chooses to go. And part of our fees within there, another scope, I guess that's slightly additional, we proposed it, was to do some referendum assistance where we help with designs, we help with I'll say the marketing material, for lack of a better term, but providing you with the documentation that makes it easier to go to the public for that referendum support.
Okay, and you need surveys to do that type of thing, to do the field designs?
We don't do, when you say surveys, you mean like field surveys or public surveys?
No, like field dimensions, all that.
Yep.
That was part of it. I saw surveys in there, and that is part, you would need that.
Yes, we need that, and that's part of our services right now, is having a full topographical survey done of all three sites.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will note that it's not in any of the numbers you can see, but we did shop a lot of those services around. And I had conversations with Mark about that. Even from the survey perspective, we got survey pricing ranging from the roughly $30,000 or the price we're at now to $70,000. So it wasn't like we just went with one particular company. We did those services that wasn't either our services or Castle Booze. We did shop those around to try to get the best value for the town.
Okay. I was just wondering if like all those things were needed to come up with a cost and to see what could fit where. All right.
Yeah, the survey is definitely needed because everything we've been using to date is just GIS based stuff. So we need to really know real property lines, where the edges of things are, what the even finished floor of like the buildings at the high school and all that sort of stuff. We need that greater level of detail so we can get the plans to that greater level of detail to get the costs nailed down. Once we go to referendum, there is not a going back for more money, right? So we want to get things as closely defined as possible now. So that's why we need it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other discussion questions from anyone?
I'm sorry, I have one more.
Oh, go right ahead.
Is this going to be and maybe I missed some things because you've had other meetings, but is this going to be synthetic or grass, and how, like, because that would absolutely change some of.
Yep,
Yeah.
great question. So part of the requested services is to do a field surface evaluation, and go through those issues and make some recommendations and provide the committee and the town with the information that's out there for both field safety of both synthetic as well as natural, do a full assessment, to help provide some guidance as to what that selection is going to be. So right now, there are some, I'll say, perceived assumptions as to what fields might be what from a synthetic or a natural surface, but we're coming at it from a design perspective of they could be either. And then we're going to help you go through that study, looking at the information, looking at costs, and then make the determination as to which or how many, maybe whatever field type you decide.
Thank you.
And I will note we have received, and I think Mark included it in some of your information, but an email from Groton Conservation Associates already. And I've had a couple replies back to them, just opening that communication dialogue up so that we can start to understand concerns and issues they have and make sure we're accurately answering their issues.
So Mark, I just have a question. You would need to see get your hands on the architectural of the fields at the high school, or the area, the locker room area, prior to actually coming up with a number for that, right? How far along? I mean, I don't know if you can, I'm not saying you just can't cut that number from the high school from that number. It can't go to 0, I'm assuming.
Frank, are you asking me or Chad?
Chad, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
Oh, that's all right.
My recommendation at this point is that we would cut the building architectural services for the high school to 0, and we proceed with the plans that have been developed for the high school and the cost estimates that have been developed for the high school. And then if for some reason they're not sufficient, or we need to do a little bit of extra work, we could talk about that. But my recommendation at this point would be we just proceed forward with under the assumption that those are sufficient.
And Chad, I think my recollection was that they had final numbers
Yeah, and I've
attached
heard
to
the
both,
numbers.
so.
Yes, I've heard the numbers. That's why I think I just haven't personally seen them yet. I know they exist. So that's why I feel comfortable making the recommendation that they should be sufficient at this point. And if for some reason it's not, we can make that adjustment, but I can't imagine it being significant at this point.
My only question is, Rich Costa, did you ever see those plans? Did that take into account the idea that of the 8-lane track and all that stuff?
The plans that I saw were the architectural plans for the building, the field house. And there were two proposals that were made, a complete rebuild, and then additions made on either side. So there were actually 2 proposals and two sets of plans with full pricing at that point, or estimates of pricing. And I did see them, yes. And Mark, it was at least a year ago, maybe 15 months ago. And Mark does have them, and I guess he's waiting for the Board of Ed or someone to get on releasing those to Chad.
Yep. And Frank, just to clarify that when I say the architecture, it's the the building architecture, the field house, the bathrooms, that kind of stuff. The rest of the field design is still work that we need to do, right? That
Right.
they did not design the track or the fields or the concession or the grandstands or press boxes. So that's what's in our scope of work, is to do all of the field related
Okay.
stuff. Just the field house architectural component is what I'm recommending taking out at this point.
Okay.
They also didn't, well, they obviously with the renovation of the existing building, they did cite it there. But as far as the new construction, they did not cite it where they were going to get it into the overall scope of the bigger plan. So that was not included as that. So it was just really the buildings
Okay.
and the taking down of the old concession stand. That was definitely part of it. And just that building in either situation was coming down, either the rebuild or the addition.
Addition.
Yep.
Ian has a question.
Go ahead, Ian.
Thank you. Just real quick, I heard you mention you might have needed something from the Board of Ed released. Could you just review that? I didn't
Yep.
quite catch it.
Yep. So and I'm not exactly sure who has to release it at this point, but I know, the athletic director is in the process. He has the plans that were done. The Board of Ed was the one who paid for those plans, the architectural plans for the field house renovation or replacement. And he was waiting to get approval to be able to release those plans to us to be able to utilize them. And so I think he was taking it up through the chain of command. And my guess is it would go to Sam Kilpatrick, and then whether it's the superintendent or the Board of Ed, and then maybe even all the way to the architect that originally designed them, just to get permissions to be able to distribute them.
All right. Thank you for that. I'll make some inquiries on my end too to see if we can hasten that along.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, and welcome. By the way, I forgot to say that earlier.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. So, so I didn't do the math I just only did the math in my head, but so I think if we were to take this study and remove the complete architectural fees, right? Is that, am I incorrect in saying that? So the 17.5 at Cloudchester, the high school, I think we feel comfortable with that. And the 19 at Sutton should get us under the number that we have already allocated for us. And am I right there, Mark? We're
Yeah.
there.
Yes, if you take the 293.2 minus the 101,
Mhm.
that leaves us at 192.2.
Okay. Perfect. I mean, if there's any other discussion, I think that's something that as we should take this and vote on it for I guess the members. So would someone like to make a motion that we take this this design fee study and remove the architectural fee and go forward with this? I think that's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I would say sounds like the direction we want to go, to move forward with Chad's plan minus the architectural fees so we could be within budget. That would be the motion I guess I would put on table.
Okay, so the motion is to move forward with the plan minus the architectural fees, which takes our number to 192.2, which keeps us in our budget that we have. Do I have a second for that?
Yeah, either Bruce or Jim are gonna have to unmute and
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Bruce.
Sure.
Anybody have any other discussion on that? If no further discussion, I guess we all in favor of moving forward with this motion, either raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Aye from Jim Southers and Danny,
Yeah, aye from Bruce.
Bruce, myself. I think that's,
Four
any
voting members.
nays?
I'm not sure if you can hear me. This is Jim, but yes, it's very loud where I am. I'm sorry.
Nope, thank you. We saw your hand too. Thank you very much. We can hear you. So that's all voting members are an aye for that. Or a yes. Okay, that's great. Love it. March 2020. Yes. I don't believe at this point we have any other business. I guess I would ask, we want to, I guess we were supposed to have a meeting probably next week, which I don't think we need to have. Should we schedule another meeting, or would you like to just schedule it and then wait to see what's the next steps, or would you just want to just hold off on scheduling until we have something back from Chad and company, or the next steps, Mark?
well, I don't want to put Chad on the spot, and I don't want it to appear that I don't value his time, but what I was, and Chad, you can say no. What I was hoping was that we would be able to continue these meetings, and Chad could zoom in, kind of tell us what's happening at the meetings, just so that we're kind of up to date and have an opportunity to ask questions rather than having Kenton Frost and Castle Booze, submit a report. I think it would be more beneficial if we could ask questions. Also understanding that, this is not the only project that he doesn't work exclusively for the town.
What?
Yeah. And yeah, so that would be, my preference, but, I'm just throwing this at Chad right now, which is really unfair.
No, it's all good.
What, April?
So what I would say is we were at the beginning of March. So we'll obviously work with Mark and the purchasing agent. We'll get contracts signed and going. The first step that I need to do is release my surveyor to get going. And what we've talked about from a process perspective is to kind of start one at a time, and as he surveys a property, he'll deliver it to us, and we'll start working on the detailed design of that property, and then he'll move through each property as they go, so we can start hopefully sooner instead of waiting until all the surveys are done and then starting work. But what I can do is set up a schedule of how I think we'd like to proceed, and a bunch of deadlines between now and end of summer, beginning of fall, so that sets us up to have things complete in enough time to discuss referendums and the timing that might take. So, I mean, if you want to schedule your regularly scheduled meeting for next month, that's fine, and I'll definitely be there. And what I would say is, hopefully in advance of that, we'll be able to send out what this schedule is, and maybe it's that we time some of those meetings so that they can fall on your regularly scheduled meetings, so you don't have to be doing special meetings and things like that. And we'll set some of our deadlines around your schedule, and then it'll probably be at least monthly once we get going, because there's definitely quite a bit of work to do and a lot of decisions to be made. So we'll be coming back to you to make sure that you're fully informed and can make all those decisions starting right off the bat.
Hey, Chad, can I just ask you a question from a novice myself? Well, first of all, Jim, do you have something, or was that just from earlier? Your hand is up. I want to make sure. I think he's good.
Yeah.
Just from a novice standpoint, like, I was wondering, like, do you have like a, I don't know how to say this. I think what you kind of said was maybe what I was looking for. Like, I didn't know if we had a, I don't want to call it a timeline, but I'm kind of looking like steps, like, you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Like, not
Oh, yeah,
not how
100%.
you do your job, but I'm just like big picture, like if somebody said to me, "What's next, Frank?" I'm like, I haven't a clue. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah. Well, and so basically, again, that all those tasks that we gave you that are itemized both by fee in that spreadsheet and in the contract, by written task 1 through whatever. For the most part, we follow those tasks, the order, pretty sequentially. And the first thing is having the kickoff with you, getting the survey going, making sure we understand all the amenities. One of the conversations is even Sutton Park. Making sure we know which fields, is it 2 high school fields, a softball and a baseball? Is it a youth field? So that we're starting from the right point as we go forward. And then there is a process. And so what I would like to do is, now that we have kind of a start date, we'll take all those tasks, assign beginning end dates to them, so that we have a process to get us to the end goal on time. And then you'll be able to say, okay, this is the next step, all the way through. So, and it's a little bit complicated because it's 3 different sites. A lot of times when you're doing this, it's one site, one project kind of thing. So I still look at it as one project. We just happen to have 3 different sites. But that complicates things a little bit just from a survey and data collection perspective, because there's a lot of different things to get.
okay, no, that's good.
Yeah, and we'll definitely start off on that field service evaluation, right off the bat, to start compiling all that information, feeding it back to you guys as a committee and the town council and whoever wants to see it and be part of that discussion, because that'll have an impact on how well the fields meet the needs, the demand that we currently have.
And Mark, I was going to ask you this question. Should we reach out to the town council and like give them this is kind of where we're at. It's been a while. We're still here. I mean, I know they know that, but is it something that just to give them an update, is that something that we should do or no? I'm asking.
Oh, most definitely. And my plan was to do some kind of like a press release, just announcing that Kenton Frost and Castle Blues had been selected as the consulting firms for the athletic field design. So I'll put something together so that and share it with the town managers, who will share it with the town council.
Okay. Portia, jeez.
Well,
Portia,
that's
go
good.
ahead. Apologize. I put your last name and your first name together.
That's all right. I've
Now
been
you're
called,
Portia.
I've been called many things. That's not a bad one. So I'll take it. Actually, so I do watch a lot of the Board of Ed meetings, and I know one of the things I heard over the last many weeks is that, we still haven't heard any update on, fields or anything. So I do hope that you include them maybe on the list, at least from the athletic side of what would affect the school. So I do think add them on the list to maybe see if you can get on their agenda to give these updates as well. I personally think it would be helpful.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
Yep.
I would definitely agree with that as a individual board member. I would encourage reaching out to the board, and one of the things I've been trying to get the board to you know, take some action on is getting more assertive with their positioning on the fields and facilities.
Excellent. Ian, should we reach out to the superintendent through you, or should we let Mark make that coordination? I mean, I'd be happy to try to get on the agenda whenever the next available time is to show up and have that kind of pre-kickoff
Sure.
meeting.
Yeah,
So-
I'd recommend reaching out to the superintendent and the chair, Jay Whiteloff.
Yep.
They're the ones who set up the agendas, and they work together to set up the agendas. So they sort of have the master calendar. So they'd be the ones to contact.
All right.
Thank you.
So Frank, I'm not sure that we need to have a meeting in 2 weeks because I don't know that there's going to be that much to
April.
report on, but I think definitely the April meeting.
Yep.
There will be things to share.
April 18th, I think that's the,
Is that the next meeting? Okay.
I believe so. I mean, that's the third Thursday in April, which is
Okay.
our normal meeting time.
Okay.
Chad, would that be sufficient time to get something going?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Well, definitely. I mean, like I said, at the very least, we definitely want to have schedules and all of that stuff identified. So we'll definitely have that by then, and I'll have a good idea from my surveyor as to how the survey process is going, and know when some of that's getting completed so we can start the design work. Oh, Frank, you're muted if you're.
Thanks. Sorry. Mark and Chad, if we get on anybody's calendars in the next whenever, just if you let me know, I'll come as well. I think I'm in town most of the time, so shouldn't be an issue. Okay. No other discussion. I think we could take a motion to adjourn, and we'll meet again on April 18th.
I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you. All in concurrence, say aye. That's
Aye.
me. Any nays? No.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Have a nice
Good
day
night.
or night,
Evening.
evening.